So welcome everyone. My name is Cripto Luis, and this is Talk with Saros on Money on Chain. And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Giacomo Zucco. So let's give him a welcome. We are going to have a very interesting discussion today.
Hi, everybody.
Very hello, Giacomo. Welcome. We're having this discussion, which is very up to date since last year, since everything started regarding ordinals and the so-called spammy transactions on Bitcoin. So um, I know that your ventures and your work through the years have gave you the position to talk about this and teach us all these different, all this knowledge that we should have about this current debate. So welcome and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me and looking forward to have this debate. I think it's a very interesting topic because it's an important problem per se, like the sustainability of full nodes, but it's also a topic that opens up other kind of very deep considerations about the purpose of Bitcoin, the concepts like censorship, the concepts like behavior within the system, the technical subtleties like the difference between a mempool policy and a consensus rule, the difference between the use of Bitcoin for as a database and the use of Bitcoin as an asset. So the nature of Bitcoin as an asset, financial asset, or a database. The difference between Bitcoin and the underlying blockchain system. The future of fees, sustainability, the so-called security budget. So it opens up a rabbit hole of different considerations that are all very interesting.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It challenges your conceptions about the technology and all this movement of Bitcoin through the years, through its history, because at the beginning you could perceive all this movement of the ordinals and all these kind of new technologies like BRC20s and all that stuff like silly stuff. At the beginning you saw them like, oh, they're just playing, they're just trying to make silly or stupid or retarded, like you used to call it, things with Bitcoin, but the implications are really big. Not only for the in practice with the usage of the protocol, but also with the philosophical and things about Bitcoin. So we want to dive into that today. But first of all, you can make a short introduction about yourself for anyone that doesn't know you, and maybe relate. I know you have an extensive work throughout the years with Bitcoin, but maybe talk us a little bit about what are you doing now regarding the topic that we're discussing today.
So my education comes from theoretical physics, and I was a technology consultant in Accenture before Bitcoin. And in 2013, I moved to Bitcoin only startups and things. I participated to various things, and one of those things was a research laboratory called the Blockchain Lab in Milan that lasts for years. We organized many meetings for standards. Within our laboratory, there was the conception of standards like the bold specification of for Lightning, the open timestamps standard, the RGB protocol, which also connects with the ordinals discussion a little bit, and also the open timestamps one connects. Then I was mostly a consultant freelance for several years, investor and small investor and advisor in a few Bitcoin startups. More recently, I started the Plan B Network initiative with other partners like Roxy of the Cover Bitcoin, with the financial support of Fulgur and Tether. And the Plan B Network is basically two things: is some kind of online university, so to speak. So it's a place to condense and systematize all the knowledge about Bitcoin. So we will try to select and integrate the best Bitcoin courses from university courses in several universities to free courses made by freelance teachers. And it's also a federation of physical spaces and physical nodes, the Plan B network nodes, because we think that also we have to federate physical buildings, not just for online interaction, but also for geographically local interaction. So that's what I'm doing now. The website you can check out is planb.network. It's still very early stage. We are still developing everything. We announced everything in end of October, and we are still producing stuff as we go. So that's what I'm mostly dedicated to now. Should just add that one of the startups I'm investor and advisor in, there are many, but one is Ocean, which is a mining pool, which was very heavily involved in the current debate that we are going to have. And one of the protocols that we started as Blockchain Lab was RGB, which is also heavily involved because it could be seen as a competing standard, but also a completely different philosophy for an asset standard.
Yeah, I've been following RGB since I don't know 4 years, 5 years. It's basically started, and it has this approach of issuing tokens or assets on Lightning. So that says a lot of about what your philosophy is about this debate. Maybe it goes around not using the mainnet or on-chain network to do this kind of thing. So let's dive into that. Like, um, let's start from the beginning. Like, what are ordinals, and what do you think these people are looking for? Because their argument is that they are bringing innovation into Bitcoin, and I know there's a lot of old literature about this debate and other technologies. And personally, I'm kind of an enthusiast or user of counterparty and all that stuff, which is a very old stuff. But this technology seems to be revived now by a crowd that maybe they don't feel satisfied with the current scaling solutions on Bitcoin. So, do you think that their claims are legit, or that their pursuit of this innovation through ordinals is legit?
Actually, one of my strongest position, even stronger than the debate, my position in the debate about filtering, about mining pools, about everything else. The strongest of my issues with all this phenomenon was exactly about the claim of novelty and innovation. I've read articles about ordinals being the whole only innovation going on Bitcoin, or any kind of innovation. Well, as you said, these things go back to at least 2012. So when I was first involved in Bitcoin, the first kind of technical debate I had with people like Lawrence Naum, Peter Todd, Riccardo Casata, Alex Mizrachi was exactly about colored coin and counterparty and Omni. And that was the thing that brought to me to the development of RGB as a debate. So for me, is also somehow a personal point, because in Bitcoin we are seeing the effect of Eternal September, just like in the internet. So Eternal September is a meme that was popularized with the commercialization of the internet, because at the beginning only university people had an internet access. So every September there were the new freshmen coming in, and they were basically storming the internet chats, but they didn't know the rules, the history, the precedents, the culture. They didn't know anything. They had to relearn everything. In Bitcoin, we have something similar. And then when it was commercialized, it was not only September anymore, but it was an eternal September, because there was new people coming in every day. In Bitcoin, it's the same. And it's particularly shocking to me when stuff that was already discussed and largely debunked in 2012 is now presented as innovation of novelty. So my strongest claim of all would be, this is nothing new. Believe me, you can search on Bitcoin Talk. Every single debate we are having about the security budget, about censorship, about spam, about everything was discussed. Actually, since 2009, there are interaction between Satoshi Nakamoto and Gavin Andresen about embedding Lady Gaga songs in the blockchain, and why it's a bad idea and how can you stop it or not. So this is already old stuff. This is my main claim. Don't believe anybody telling you that this is innovation of any kind. If any innovation is there, it's just marketing innovation. We have to admit that the first wave of this kind of experiments on Bitcoin died off. Counterparty is basically is faded away as a protocol Omni even more, and other colored coin ideas. The companies created to do colored coins, so they were like Colu, Coin Prism, Coin Spark, Chromaway. They all closed down or pivoted to something else. So the fade the hype went away. Now there are two possibilities: either the new hype has something more to offer, or a better market timing, or a better moment, or it's just a new cycle of another fad that will go away again. And I'm probably more inclined to think the latter. So let's go back to the beginning. The first thing we have to discuss is this colored coin proposal of 2012. You can still find it on Bitcoin Talk. I can probably link you um, the topic here, so you can put it. I already have it here, so you can put it if you want in the chat. Let me put it here in the private chat and in the comment here. Uh, this is the thread, and the idea was basically Bitcoin is tracking what we called coins on chain. Coins is the name that we used to give to UTXOs. So basically, output of transactions. That's the only thing it's tracking. Every output has a number of satoshis as a size. Every output is big, like 1 satoshi, 100 satoshi, 1,000 satoshi, 1 million satoshis, or 100 million satoshi, which is basically Bitcoin. So this is just a size associated to a coin. There is no concept in Bitcoin of individual tracking of satoshis. That just doesn't exist. So there is no way to track satoshi. When you do a Bitcoin transaction, you spend completely all the UTXO with all the satoshis included, and you create new UTXOs that are completely separated. But some people in 2012 had this idea: what if we make up a additional convention that, and we say that every time we spend a UTXO with some Satoshi number associated to it, and we create new UTXOs, we associate conventionally one Satoshi in this UTXO to one Satoshi in this other UTXO. If we do so, we can give some kind of unique characteristic to these Satoshis, and we can use it to track other property that are not Bitcoin. So the idea is that we can already use digital systems to track stuff like bonus points, fidelity points, air miles, telephone air time, shares, stocks, bonds, private credit. These already exist in the digital world, but it's all centralized. So the idea is Bitcoin is already offering us this decentralized ledger to track money or digital gold. What if we reuse this ledger to also track something else which is not money? So, for example, private credit and stuff like that. One of the ways which is proposed in this Bitcoin Talk post is let's do a first in, first out convention. So let's say that the first Satoshi in the first input is equal of the first Satoshi in the first output, and the second to the second, the third to the third, and so on and so on. So now we can conventionally track every single basically Satoshi, and we can use it to basically give them this other kind of significance or behavior to make it a collectible or to make it representative of something else. So this was the idea. As you can see in the thread, this idea, when it was proposed in 2012, was even not new. Like somebody was answering in the comments, oh, but this is an old idea because we already discussed it a few months ago. So it was not even new back then. This idea or immediately faced some kind of pushback. I personally found it very fascinating in 2012 and 2013 when I first heard of it. Like we called back then, we called it Bitcoin 2.0. Like, why don't we use Bitcoin for private credit as well? The first objection, which is a weak objection, is yes, but you don't need to, because most of the tokens that you can imagine, like private credit, is still centralized. So there is still somebody that will have to basically convert it. So if you use it for, let's say, Tether USDT, there is still a Tether company that will have to convert
Yeah.
it to actual dollars. So if you use it for any kind of, if you even if you use it for art, let's say you associate it to some kind of art piece, but then it will be trivial for everybody to claim that they are the author of the same art piece, and everybody can associate the same image to an infinite number of single satoshis. So you need some kind of intermediary like OpenOcean to actually give you the guarantee that this is actually the artwork. So it's again to be something centralized. So the first objection is this is useless. But if it was a zero cost, so you can still do something which is, I mean, even if you don't have to, if you can, why not? If it doesn't have any cost. And now there are the strongest objection, which are basically three. The first objection is about privacy and fungibility. So for Bitcoin, the fact that you can track every single UTXO and you can see when a UTXO is created and when another is destroyed, and you can create some heuristics to connect these. And for example, you can say this is probably the change, this is probably the payment, these inputs are probably coming from the same spender. This is not a feature, this is a bug. Satoshi Nakamoto himself in the white paper were saying some level of linking is necessary and that's bad for privacy. But the good thing is that there is pseudonymity, which protects your privacy. So even if there is some linking, we can still make a very strong privacy defense. But that was always a negative for Bitcoin, the fact that you can de-anonymize. The whole point of Bitcoin is to separate your public identity from your public key, so that people cannot know that the private key is in your possession, so they cannot come to your house to beat you into a pulp to give the keys. The whole cypherpunk idea, the whole research program that generated Bitcoin was all about privacy. The idea was we cannot have freedom in the physical realm because the government will come and take our gold physically. But we can have freedom in the digital realm, crypto anarchism or cypherpunk ideology, because on the internet we don't have our physical body with our physical residence name. We are just a pseudonym. So if we can use digital identities and digital signatures, we can prevent violence. So the whole point of Bitcoin is basically privacy, together with scarcity. So the main trouble with these colored coin schemes is that it was reducing privacy and fungibility in two ways. The first way is that the most private things that you can do is passing around money off chain so that the global consensus cannot track it. One example is Lightning routing. We open a channel between me and you on Lightning. We do a lot of back and forth off chain in the channel, and we even do routing of different channels. Or we can do a coin swap. I spend a coin to this address. You spend the coin to this other address. These are not connected on chain, but they are. There is a trustless setup that makes it atomic. Or there is submarine swap in, submarine swap out, coin join. So all the techniques we can use for privacy, they are off chain. If you create an incentive to use on chain techniques to correlate stuff, you are basically pushing against moving off chain. Because for example, if you have an ordinal in some position in your TXO, and now you do routing payment on Lightning, you will move your ordinal to the other person following the convention. So the convention, first Satoshi in, first Satoshi out, cannot see everything which is happening off chain. They cannot track CoinJoin, they cannot track CoinSwap, they cannot track side chains, for example. If you send your money to the Liquid address, now you can move your money on Liquid, and then you can get back from another Liquid address. But the colored coin scheme will lose all this detail. So the incentive to track Satoshis goes against the incentive to move off chain, especially for privacy. And also it creates a new heuristics for analysts, for chain analysts. For if you are looking to a transaction, you in order to de-anonymize people, to attack people privacy, you can use some heuristics like probably these people are the same in the input are the same because this is probably not a coin join. Probably this amount splits into this amount, so you can do amount correlation. probably this is the payment, this is the change, because this is like a whole number, this is not a whole number. So you can do heuristics. If you add this kind of colored coin scheme, you are adding a new form of heuristic. The more people will use it, the more people can use that heuristic as reliable to de-anonymize people. So it goes against privacy, basically. It's a tracking instrument, and Bitcoin is already too much traceable, and it should be less traceable, moving stuff off chain and confusing the tracking on chain by making every transaction hard to interpret economically. So basically, the first criticism I've heard about the correct coin idea was about privacy. If you have any question on this, or I go to the second.
No, I agree with that. Like you are creating more heuristic and categories to link up different transactions when you assign like different meanings to these coins. And Bitcoin is enough traceable, like you say.
Exactly. So this is the first problem. Of course, one can say it's just opt-in. If you want privacy, don't use the scheme. That's true. But first of all, privacy is a matter of a company. If you reduce the anonymity set, you are damaging also other people, because you are taking your
Yeah,
anonymity set out. And also, it's bad to have an incentive for user to reduce privacy. This also has like a very recent development. I'm jumping forward a bit, then I go back to the history. But just to give you an example of this, Sparrow Wallet is a great wallet, and in order to have privacy, it has an automatic ordering of UTXOs. So it does
mhm.
everything, it does automatically, because so you will not reduce your privacy by fingerprinting the coin selection. And this was breaking, of course, ordinal collectibles. So ordinal people made a PR that they stormed Sparrow chats and Sparrow comments, and they started to harass Sparrow developers to deactivate this privacy feature because they were burning ordinals. And Sparrow developers say, okay, I mean, you want it. You now can deactivate a privacy feature which is creating more fingerprinting so that you can track your ordinals. So it is having direct, immediate privacy effects. And if you are thinking about opening a Lightning channel, if you have ordinals there, you cannot, because otherwise you can lose them in the routing
Yeah.
process. So basically, it's an anti-privacy technology. The second claim, which is similar, which is about scalability. So Bitcoin, the on-chain part of Bitcoin, is not just not private because anybody can track it, but it's also not scalable. For the same reason, everybody can track it and it cannot scale because it's a global consensus system. That means that every single node has to download every single transaction and rebroadcast it forever. So if you sync your node in 2050, you still have to download my coffee purchase in 2009. You cannot skip it. So it's an unscalable system and it's unprivate system for the same reason. Scalability can be achieved off-chain. So there is any system that requires every node to download everything is clearly unscalable. So in order to scale, we need to move information outside of the blockchain. And this is good for privacy and also good for scalability. Now, these colored coin schemes, they create a problem for privacy, but also for scalability, because in order to track this kind of collectibles or stuff, you cannot, for the same reason we said before, you cannot move it off chain. So you cannot use Lightning properly on those. So it goes against scalability. Not only, but it will require you to add new transactions that probably from the point of view of Bitcoin itself, they are not economically meaningful. But you need to write them on the blockchain just to move your scarce, rare Satoshi, colored Satoshi. So for
Yeah,
example,
every movement leaves a trace on the blockchain.
and it
So
must, because you are using the blockchain as a
mhm,
traceability
mhm,
stuff. So it creates a problem with scalability per se. The third order of problem, which now today is called MEV from the shitcoin world, like a miner extracted value, but back then
mhm.
it was not called like that, but it was already predicted, which is a problem of incentives. So let's assume that so on Bitcoin you move some amount of satoshis of Bitcoin, and that's create an incentive for miners to maybe censor it or filter it or reorg it or double spend it. So there are many incentives. but these incentives are connected to the value of Bitcoin. So the more Bitcoin goes up in value, the more the system will grow, and the hash rate will grow because the miner reward will grow, and so everything kinds of balance. Basically, it's evens out eventually because you have more attackers but also more defense. So everything is in equilibrium. If you introduce one Satoshi that is worth maybe like let's say, let's do an example that was discussed back then. Apple is issuing shares on colored coins. Now the Apple market cap is on top of Bitcoin, and it is greater, especially back
Hmm.
then, than Bitcoin's market cap. So now all the incentives are screwed. The miner will not just say, I mine this transaction because of the fee content. I may also, if I don't mine it, or if I mine it later, I can trigger some dynamic that will make me make more money by some kind of financial contract, by some kind of arbitrage derivatives. So miners will start to play strange games, which are not just ordering transaction, but it will become playing with transaction to try to front run some kind of deal. This is happening right now all the time in Ethereum and other shitcoins. So miners can use this tokenomics to order transaction in a way that makes them more favorable. This
Yeah,
is
it's like
this
you are assigning a higher value most of the time to these satoshis, to these portions of bitcoins, and it creates incentives that are different than
Yeah,
the Bitcoin market cap itself.
exactly,
I know they
different
can start
incentives.
playing games that basically they are outside of Bitcoin internal dynamics and
Yes, this can
market cap. Yeah.
exactly. This can seem like a separate problem of the first two, but it's strictly connected because it's still coming from the global consensus. Since everybody must see the transactions, then the miners, before they can include the transaction, they know what is the economical effect of the transaction. So if the economical effect is complex, the miners will be incentivized to play complex games instead of simple games like just order the transactions,
Hmm.
and that's it. So the problem of incentives was also discussed. So people started in 2012, 2013 to gradually move away from this first idea. Well, there is another problem which is minor, the problem of divisibility. Bitcoin only has 2.1 quadrillions of units. So 21 millions of Bitcoin is 2.1 quadrillions of Satoshis. That's the total number that we can have. This is more than enough for a small denomination of monetary value. So the monetary units in the world are probably comparable with a few trillions. You don't need much more, but for the smaller units that has economical meaning. But if you add to that also all the shares, all the bonds, all the credit, all the fidelity points of all the supermarket in the world, and all the physical object for smart property. So if you dream to use Bitcoin to track everything, then 2.1 quadrillion, that seems a lot for money, becomes not much for all the kind of property, including financial property and smart property. So that's another problem. So people started to move away from this simple idea, like this is bad for privacy, this is bad for scalability. Let's do, for example, counterparty. In counterparty, at least you are not using the coins, the satoshis individually. You are just putting an op return with another meta interpretation layer on top, which could be a token, but the token is not the Satoshi anymore. So now you can easily break the chain of traceability. You can mix the Satoshis, you can coin join, you can coin swap, you can lightning route, and it will not break the upper level of counterparty, which is better than the initial idea of numbering Satoshis. You are not limited to 2.1 quadrillion. You have a limited number of you can even issue 10 quadrillion of units because you're just writing a meta protocol in the operator, so it's better. And it's slightly better for scalability because for the same reason, you can, in theory, you can move counterparty of chain. It was never done. People tried, so there was like a copy of counterparty called Mastercoin. Was a worse copy because they did a scammy ICO, then they rebranded to Omni, but it was basically very similar. Omni tried to adopt Lightning recently. It's called OmniBolt because in theory it's compatible. And counterparty, there was I made a proposal before RGB to make counterparty on Lightning because it's in theory possible. So it was better. Then there was RGB. That was my idea coming from the suggestion from Peter Todd in 2016 that I developed and published in 2018. RGB is completely the opposite. RGB uses only Bitcoin to prevent double spending at the settlement layer, and everything else is off chain. In RGB,
Hmm.
the issuance of the asset doesn't touch the blockchain. The issuance happens
Hmm.
on a contract completely off chain. Then the transfer of the assets do need the blockchain, but you just need an existing Bitcoin transaction. So if you are an exchange, you can just do one Bitcoin transaction in your exchange that is moving other kind of satoshis, and on top, and you can use that to confirm how thousands of RGB asset transactions that are completely unrelated to that. And it's all happening privately. So in RGB, all the transaction is happening between me, that I'm sending the asset, and you, the receiver. Only we share the information. The miners cannot see it. Other people cannot see it. So RGB not only doesn't damage privacy, it also increases privacy because now if people use RGB extensively, nobody is right now, but if they did, when you look at a Bitcoin transaction, now you have to wonder, is this heuristic true or RGB can break it because maybe the amount fits this way? But if we also imagine some hidden RGB meaning that we cannot see, then the amount may actually be completely different. So RGB increases privacy for Bitcoin. It increases scalability because, for example, we could represent a number of Bitcoin on RGB, and then in one single Bitcoin transaction, we can have thousands of RGB transactions. So it also aggregates transaction. It's not something that we can do right now in a trustless way, but it's an idea. It's a research program. So it goes in the direction to help privacy, to help scalability, and it doesn't create any MEV incentive because the miner, when they see a transaction, they cannot see, they cannot touch the asset. They don't even know it
Yeah.
exists. It's completely transparent. So it
So
destroys completely the MEV problem.
so basically for RGB, you only use the blockchain like when you're closing or opening a channel on Lightning. Is similar to that.
It's similar to that, but even when you do, you can, for example, already do something that in Lightning we cannot do easily without Covenant, which is aggregating a lot of stuff. For example, let's imagine that you are using an NFT, an NFT on RGB, like something representing an artwork, and we will discuss about that. But if you are doing that, you cannot route it through Lightning, through Lightning, because if we put a frog meme ownership, let's assume that makes sense,
Hmm.
in a channel between me and you, now we have to I have to send it to your friend. I cannot route it because being unique, it is in our channel, not in the other channel. So we have to close the channel and open another one. So even or with RGB, we need to go outside of Lightning sometime. But even when we go outside of Lightning, with one single Bitcoin transaction that will send money, so you have to send money to your exchange or your barber shop independently, you can use that transaction to close a giant number of RGB channels and to open another giant number of RGB channels. So the opening and closing of channel is separated to the actual transaction. So it's very scalable as well. So this was the evolution. I was in, active in it. So this is one of the reasons I'm very triggered by the future development, because I was part of this path going away from on-chain protocols that are bad for privacy, for scalability, for incentives, to off-chain protocols that are good for privacy, good for scalability, and neutral for incentives. Of course, this is not coming for free. The difference is other complexity. Core coin schemes were very simple, while RGB is very complex. It requires to
Yeah.
be online at the same time, the years of development, complexity. So it's not for free, but it's better for Bitcoin, especially if we go back to the point: do you really need it? So you need Bitcoin for digital neutral gold. Do you need Bitcoin for a collectible? Or my strong assumption is not really. So if you're doing it a way that helps Bitcoin, like RGB, because it helps research and development, probably you don't need it anyway, but it doesn't hurt. It actually helps Bitcoin. If you do it in a way that damages Bitcoin, and reduces privacy, reduces scalability, then don't do it. Do it somewhere else. So
Yeah,
what
so
happens that
definitely RGB. I've been following through the years, but it's been a while. I don't hear anything about it because it's such a complex
it's
technology.
complex. Yeah,
Still, that it needs to be a little bit more developed to go mainstream,
and
and
it's
to
also,
achieve all this stuff.
yeah, it's not just complexity, it's also a cultural problem. Like, I was the main guy proposing RGB, and I
Mm,
don't really like the use cases for tokens. So let's say that you are a digital artist and you want to do an NFT. You can go to somebody in the let's say ordinals or whatever, and they will sell you, yeah, that's great, I love your monkey, I love your this is art, and use the protocol, or ERC20 or whatever. Then you come to me and I say, you can do it with RGB, but I think it's a stupid idea anyway. Don't do it. And if you really do it on MySQL. If you really, really want to use the decentralized protocol, I don't see why. You can use RGB. I will not promote you. If somebody asks me, so if you use RGB for your paper frog, and somebody asks me, is it good? I will tell them, no, it's stupid. You should not pay for that. So this is not a very great incentive to use
yeah,
RGB.
but
So
but I wasn't hearing better things, about issuing stable coins and better stuff than
that's
frogs and
that's
bullshit.
better, but for another reason. But even in that case, if you come to me outside of regulation, and you are Tether, and you ask me, do we need RGB to issue USDT? My answer is no. It's
No.
crazy. It's super complex. You just need a database. Just install MySQL, because you are a centralized entity, and your master ledger will everything that matters. So just use, like PayPal, just use a database. But then subtils, because if they use a database, the regulators will try to regulate their secondary market just like PayPal. So blockchain magic for Tether, for example, is a way to have a free secondary market that PayPal cannot have. So they need the plausible deniability to say, I cannot touch the blockchain. It's not me maintaining the secondary market register. I can KYC AML, the primary market, but then the secondary market, everybody's free. To do that, you need some level of decentralization. So in that case, I start to say, okay, if you really, really want to do Tether on a decentralized system, maybe RGB is a good idea. It's not the only idea. You can do it with liquid assets, with state chains. You can do it with peer credit, which is something that Tether is coming up with. Those ideas, like peer credit, is probably even better than RGB
Yeah,
technically.
I wanted to ask you, take this opportunity to ask you about money on chain and dollar on chain, which is basically a decentralized stable coin that money on chain is
On
is
Rustock,
promoting. If you have, yeah, of course, Rustock. If you have had the chance to take a look on that, and what are your opinions
I
in
did
this
when it
regard
was
that we're discussing right now?
I did when it was first created and promoted. I was contacted by my friends in Rustock that explained to me I think it's way better than using the main chain. For of course, Rustock, in my opinion, has some similar problem to RGB. So it's not maximalist enough to be loved by maximalists, because
Mhm.
you're still bringing in a use case that maximalists are skeptical about,
Yeah,
but is not shitcoining enough to attract the masses of degenerates. So if you really want to go scammy, then you go full scammy, and you have crazy claims, unrealistic claims. You just create your own blockchain, your own token. You buy your Lamborghini, and you just sell crazy dreams. If you want to be maximalist, then you become like more like, yes, sun money. We don't care for degenerate gambling. We don't even want tokens. Do you really want tokens at all? I mean, satoshis are just better. So you become more focused on the monetary part. And RGB and Rustock are different ways to stay in the middle, which is challenging, because yeah, there is this, like, some little bit of conflict of interest, because I'm saying to everybody, I only care for Bitcoin, but if you really want something else, come and do it on my protocol, which people will probably not, because they will either go to the full scammers or just not do tokens in general. Like, for
but I
example,
think that eventually maximalists will come to these solutions like Rustock and RGB, because they had the perfect balance between what you say. They are not going full scammy or token enthusiasts, but they also trying to provide solutions that in deep down Bitcoiners are looking for.
I hope so, but you see the market fit problems. It's like, for example, a very huge application on Ethereum is Uniswap. So you have Uniswap. It's a simple application. It's like atomic swap between shitcoins on Ethereum. Roosstock can do everything that Ethereum can do. Technically speaking,
Mhm.
you can take the code for Uniswap, bring it on Roosstock, and it will just work. But the whole point of Roosstock was that you don't need a shitcoin to create a protocol. Roosstock was created without a shitcoin reusing Bitcoin. Well, then there was the Roosstock token, actually, which was a very bad idea in my opinion. But anyway, that there was that, but then it basically disappeared. So in Roosstock, the whole point of the architecture is don't have the shitcoins. Now the question is, okay, I have now Uniswap. What I am trading with what? The main point of Uniswap on Ethereum is that people are using shitcoin, including Ether, and they are exchanging shitcoins with more shitcoins, because then some developer will come and they will do the Ethereum Lightning Network, which was called Raiden, and then they will issue a new token to use Raiden, and then you can trade Raiden with Ethereum Ether. Then they will create Plasma, and they will issue a new token for Plasma.
Mhm.
So, and then Uniswap, they will have their own token. So the shitcoin mentality, you need swaps because you have barter, you
Yeah,
don't
I
have
mean,
money.
you can go. It's basically a fiat behavior.
It's a
You are
fiat behavior, exactly.
creating
You're
tokens after tokens based on debts and
Yeah.
rapid tokens over another. But I think that Roosstock has been very wise not to fall into that trap, because maybe their marketing is not that aggressive, but they could definitely go as reckless like the ordinal guys. Like they are trying to do this. These shitcoin games to promote maybe a bigger, I don't know, all these things that we're talking about, innovation and all these
what I,
apparently noble and virtuous goals they have.
what I appreciate about Roosstock is that
But
they use the part of the
they are
money
not.
to develop a research that can be useful for Bitcoin itself,
Yeah, but Rostock is not
Sergio.
going. I don't think they're going to sacrifice their reputation or their integrity for that. So I think they're being very patient, and in the end it's a tool. They are not hurry up about it.
Yeah,
um
my other skepticism would be that this problem that I told you, the market fit problem, I think it afflicts Roosstock and RGB as well, the same level. So maybe you're right that we'll find the sweet spot, but it's also hard to stay in between, basically, because you are getting problems from both ways. And the second things that they have in common, RGB and Roosstock, is that they don't they are off chain, so they
mhm.
don't damage Bitcoin while you open to these use cases. But if anything, they can even improve Bitcoin by creating more scalability incentives, or privacy incentives, or research for future Bitcoin scalability and privacy. So they are a net good. So you can take stupid use cases and turn them into net good. This is the same for Roosstock and for RGB. There is one advantage, I think, between RGB for RGB, which is the fact that RGB doesn't try to recreate the blockchain scheme. So Roosstock is based on a sidechain idea like Liquid, which it was an idea that I was a huge fan of back in 2013, 2014. Well, actually, a little bit later, 14, 15. But recently, I'm more skeptical because when you don't go, so when you sacrifice the global consensus, which is the problem in Bitcoin, the fact that every node must know everything, then the design you can lead to is probably very different from Bitcoin. So try to replicate the same design, but with merge mining, two-way peg federations like Liquid and like Roosstock. Maybe it's too restricted, while RGB is, at this point, RGB uh, leaves the blockchain
Yeah,
go
Lightning
entirely.
doesn't have those problems. You're not using a
Exactly.
blockchain.
Exactly, inside the Lightning channel,
Mhm.
precisely. Then some of the problems may recreate themselves, but like, or a Fedimint. A Fedimint is something similar to Liquid, but you don't have a blockchain anymore. You just do Xiaomi Mint. So it depends. But anyway, what they have in common for our conversation here is that unlike colored coins and counterparty to a lesser degree, assets on Rootstock and Liquid and RGB, they don't damage Bitcoin. If anything, they help Bitcoin
Mhm.
privacy, scalability, and incentive structure. So this is the
So
good thing.
I
Yeah.
wanted to go back uh, to leave to our audience clear if Giacomo Zucco is a monetary maximalist for Bitcoin, because the thing is that Bitcoin is a data system, and we can basically avoid data inscription in this system. So
So
what should we do? Maybe the best thing we can do is to keep our work focused on monetary use cases,
let
or
me pause a second, because now we have the history of colored coins, which mixes with another issue, which is separate, which is encoding arbitrary data. So using Satoshi to track property is encoding other kinds of data, true, but it's still, if not monetary, it's almost monetary. It's still transaction of property. So what about stuff that are not economic at all? They are just writing stuff on the database. So now we move to another precedent, which is actually Satoshi himself, that has to put in the global consensus the Genesis block. And so he decided he had to use some fields in the Coinbase that every miner today has to use to generate the extra entropy. So they have to put data anyway. So why not putting some content in this data? So Satoshi put there the newspaper of the Times of the November 3. So basically cancel her on brink of the second bailout for banks. That was for two reasons. One was ideological reason, to just show the economical situation, but the other was to prove that it was not pre-mining before, because it was proving that he started mining the block the same day, so it did a fair take. So that was the reason. After a while, there was a famous developer in cypherpunk who passed away, and some of his friends decided to basically put his face as a stylized depiction into the
yeah,
blockchain.
I remember him, Len Sassaman.
Sussman, exactly.
Great
And
guy.
since they were there, they also depicted the face of Ben Bernanke with ASCII, and they put it in the same
Mhm.
transaction. So this was another case of Bitcoin used, and one could say abused, for for another scope. So
Yeah.
we need to transact digital gold, digital cash, digital money. To make it work without double spending, we need a global consensus where everybody replicates the data. But that's not just because we want it, that's because we need it to avoid double spending. So I need to download and to store all the UTXOs of all the other people, not because I care. To me, they are irrelevant, but because I must, because money is so that it will circulate. So eventually, I may be required to validate this step in the chain of property. So I need to download everything. I don't want to download everything. And in fact, with Lightning, I don't have to. And with side chains, I don't have to. But I need to make Bitcoin work. So the idea to that the Sussman image or the Bernanke image is, since everybody already is going to download this anyway, let's put this Easter egg, this joke inside. So there was like my friend Riccardo Casata had another idea that was creating some kind of Twitter on the blockchain. He did it. It was called Eternity Wall. The story is also fascinating. Like there
Sounds
was a
bad.
yeah. So the story is Bitcoin mom, which is the mother of Jack Muller. Jack Muller was saying on Twitter that her husband dedicated to her a love sentence on Bitcoin forever. My friend Riccardo Casata in Milan in Blockchain Lab, he went to see, and that was not true. It was just the note field of a wallet, but it was not on the blockchain. So he said, if
Mhm.
you really wanted to embed this love message on the blockchain forever, you should do like this. And he created a website called Eternity Wall, where you could put your message on an op return, and if your message was too big, the software was breaking up into several op returns in different transactions and creating aggregating the message. And then he created basically a scheme of answers, so a graph, a DAG of answers. So if you want to respond to a message, or if you want to like a message, you send, if you want to like, you send a Bitcoin with with one of the output, which is the output with the op return. So you burn some coin and you can answer to messages and you can give light. So basically you recreated Twitter on chain with messages that last forever. People were paying fees to write these forever. And
Still up today, I see those messages when
they're
there's a
still there.
newborn child. They make an up return transaction with the date and the name of the
Yeah,
child, or if you're
he,
marrying your wife or
yeah.
something.
I did
Or
it for there was a nice mobile app with a wallet. It generated the BIP39 wallet inside. You connect it, you have your identity, so you can register your identity like your Twitter profile, and you can
mm,
write. And I did it. I used it for my daughter when she was born. I say, "Welcome, Amanda." So if you look at the blockchain, you can still find it. EW Eternity Wall. Welcome, Amanda. At the moment she was born, and it's still there. So it was cool. But we had a discussion back then with Luke Dashier, and this was a discussion that back then I didn't understand immediately, and it was very illuminating for me. And now I understand it better. And the discussion was, you are spamming Bitcoin users. And my first reaction was, well, no. First of all, no, we are paying fees to write.
it's yeah, but it's an undesirable message to have in your node. It's like receiving an email. It's literally spam.
It's
You're
literally
receiving
spam. The thing
an
that was confusing me, and is still confusing some people, is that you are paying. So if you are paying a fee, that's an anti-spam mechanism. But wait, spammers are often paying something.
yeah.
Like if you spam with a phone call, you pay a call center. If you spam with email, you have to pay your email server and electricity. But the point is that there is a sublinear cost of your spam. So you pay once, and then you can replicate the information to many people. So
Mhm.
the cost for you is low compared to the reach that you can have. That's spam. And in Bitcoin is the same. You do pay something. You pay the inclusion in one block. But once you have it, you can now force everybody else to replicate this information forever. So
Mhm.
with the cost, so if you think about that, like a telephone number spammer, he will pay what, maybe $1,000 for a call center, and then it can reach millions of users by phone. In Bitcoin, you pay today, even if the fees are high, you pay $30 once, and then you can reach every Bitcoiner forever that will be forced to download your stuff for the way Bitcoin works. So it is a spam mechanism.
And you
Uh,
can't delete that message.
you can delete it if you prune, but that's also,
It's
now we
not
will discuss like stamps together. So the way it was, the
valid.
op return, the good thing of op return was that you can delete it, because every time you see an op return, you see that script will fail, so it cannot be spent. So you can do an easy stuff on your computer that will say, every time you find an op return on a UTXO, delete it. Also, you can prune old blocks. So even if you have to keep the transaction in the UTXOs, you can
Mhm.
throw away the blocks. But even if you can delete them, you must download them. So every node they will have to sync with a full node in 2050, they will have to download them and to validate them. Then they can delete them. So it's still spammy. And also, if you want to have a full node, so if you want to be able to fully replicate the Bitcoin state without trusting anybody, which is a good thing that is still possible for everybody to do. Maybe you don't want to do that, but if you do want, then forever you will have to download my message for my daughter, which is good for me, but is literally spam. Now, the other question that came up back then with Luke and Ricardo, and people are still discussing it today, and I'm very triggered by that, because now I understand I was wrong about it. Is if somebody finds value in it, is not spam. But that's a very silly definition of spam, because by definition, every spammer finds value in spam.
Yeah,
Otherwise, they will not be
but
spamming. The value
yeah,
could be a prank. It's valuable for me. Pranking people is
exactly. Uh-huh.
valuable. Could be taking down a competitor with a DDoS. For me, it's valuable to take down the competitor. It could be commercial, like even if people will be annoyed, 1% of these people will buy my product. So that's a value for me. So spam is always valuable for the spammer. The definition of spam is that it is not valuable for the receiver. The receiver will rather use the platform without that. They adopted the platform without interest in this kind of information. That's the definition for everything. Like you go on Twitter and you find Twitter bots spamming you, your mentions. It's not that what is the criteria to define spam bots from not spam bots? The criteria is, are you annoyed personally by this or not? If there is
Mhm.
somebody who enjoys spam bots, somebody who loves it, that doesn't make it not spam. It is still spam for everybody who was willing to use the system without this information. Now, somebody could object. Wait, all the when I pay coffee in Bitcoin, my transaction is spam for you. That's not true, because if you
Mm.
want to
Why?
receive it, yeah, because
Why
if
will someone will say that?
oh, I've received this objection. Like, you're saying so since you don't care for this a message on the blockchain, then it's spam. But then, if somebody else is using Bitcoin to pay, you don't care for their payment, so it's also spam for you. But that's not true. The reason I'm accepting to download it is because the way Bitcoin works, I need it to validate the same money in the future in case it goes back to me. So I need to maintain the UTXO set. I'm by Bitcoin. I'm forced to be interested in every single on-chain spending. It's true that I don't care if you spend your money on Lightning, and instead I don't download your information if you spend on Lightning. That's why Lightning is better
Mm.
for spending, because I don't have to care. But if you go on chain, I do have to care, because it's selfishly needed for me to maintain the future UTXO set, because eventually this money may circle back to me and I have to be able to know if I receive it correctly or not. So spending money on Bitcoin is not spam, because Bitcoiners know that they have to download 4 megabytes every 10 minutes on average, full of potential. Well, the interesting thing is that if it's real transaction, it cannot get to 4 megabytes ever, because there is always the
No.
non-witness part. But let's say 2 megabytes, 3 megabytes. I accepted that I will have to download 2 megabytes or 3 megabytes to see every 10 minutes to sync my node, because otherwise I cannot follow the money consensus on chain. So I need it. But I could use Bitcoin. I could not use Bitcoin without tracking the property chain. But I could use Bitcoin without your message about your daughter. So that's spam for me. So we realized that it was a problem, and Riccardo Casata decided to take the service down. It was a great service. It was a startup with investors, and Riccardo did a very honorable thing that I think sets apart good Bitcoiners from anybody else in the shitcoin scam. He said, is this business good for Bitcoin? He had investors, a startup, a product. He had worked for months to create a great Eternity Wall app. And he just said, okay, this is not good for Bitcoin. If everybody does this, we will have nodes that will be required to download a lot of stuff they don't need, taking up space for stuff that they need to settle
Mhm.
payments on chain. So it was an undesirable behavior, and it took off the app, and he worked on open timestamps instead. So even Luke said, op return is good because at least it's easy to prune. It's easy to prune from the UTXO set as well. So let's keep 40 bytes of op return legit, and whoever wants to prove the existence of a document, they will not put the document on chain. They will write the message to their loved one off chain, maybe the message to my daughter will be on a BitTorrent, but then the hash of the message will be in op return, which is scalable because now we can make a Merkle tree. So in every
Mhm.
single transaction, we can just put one op return, and this op return can aggregate infinite other hashes in a Merkle tree. So now we can timestamp forever the information, but not keeping it on chain. We keep it off chain, so it's scalable and also private, but we keep the proof of existence on chain. Now, this of course, like I said before about RGB, is more complex. You can lose the data. You have to work more to do it, but at least you don't damage Bitcoin. You don't
Mhm.
affect other Bitcoin users. So Ricardo moved from Eternity Wall to Open Timestamp standard with Peter Todd, and so we moved there. Now, inscription has an interesting story at this point, because we said that ordinals, so there was colored coin, bad idea for the reason we said, deleted from Bitcoin. It was adopted by shitcoins, but Bitcoiners were done with it. Writing on chain, it has an interesting arc, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of investment, but then we just got rid of it because it was bad for Bitcoin. Other people like BSV people, Craig Wright people, they started to do Twitter on Bitcoin again after, because they didn't care for scalability, because they are BSV people. So other people adopted the same idea. Now, after a few years, with the phenomenon of the eternal September, people in Bitcoin rediscovered the idea of correct coins. It was called ordinals, launched at the beginning of 2021, I think, and it was recreating the same post of 2012, identical, with the same problems. It's just that the guy that created it, it was coming from shitcoins. It was coming from Ethereum. He didn't know about Bitcoin history. He didn't care to research it. He just said, "Oh, I have a cool idea. Let's do this on Bitcoin." This cool idea was already dissected 10 years before and already demolished. And then some other people said, once you are tracking Bitcoins, why are not you also writing arbitrary data on top of the blockchain and associated the data with the coin? So they reintroduced data embedding like Eternity Wall and correct coins like Chromaway, like the first attempts in 2012, without knowing or caring that it was already a debunked idea for very good reason. And they set the research clock backwards from RGB and open timestamps. They went back to on-chain maximalism, just like Ethereum, where everything must be on-chain, so nothing can be scalable and people cannot run nodes. So basically, you see, the problem, the reason I called ordinals retarded in my speech in Prague is a pun. It's not just stupid. It's also going back full circle to something that we started from back then, but then we moved away for privacy problems, scalability problems, incentive problems, and now we're going full circle back to that. Many people are excusable for this because they don't know history. They are new. They are noobs. It's
Yeah.
in 10th of September. Some people, I think, are more malicious, and that's another problem entirely. I think that the ordinal phenomenon is both cluelessness of new people coming in, but also malicious attempt to exploit these. For example, there are many videos of Satoshi, of Craig Wright people saying so you know that, like, the wallet for ordinals, the chain explorer for ordinals, they all have been built by Craig Wright people. So these people are bragging on videos. Oh, we are damaging Bitcoin, BTC, as they say, with our spam attack. So they brag about that. And the company created to do Taproot Wizards with shitcoiners, Vertimer and other. It
Mhm.
was funded by Gavin. It was invested in by Gavin Wood and Vitalik Buterin in person. So it's not like you don't need a conspiracy theorist to think that on top of the eternal September phenomenon, this is also an explicit attack phenomenon.
So yeah, that confirms that Bitcoin is for enemies, right?
Oh, that's an
So I
interesting
mean,
point.
on this aspect of all this happening with ordinals and being an attack, um, some people might think this is good for Bitcoin because this will make you strengthen the protocol and take measures that make it more reliable and resistant to attacks. So
So
you already explained this thing with the up return, the hashed transactions in up return, the open timestamp protocol. But moving forward, I wanted to know what are you doing right now with ocean mining uh, as a mining pool? What are they doing? And what measures should Bitcoiners take to keep protecting the protocol from these attacks?
okay, many things in this question that I try to unpack. Sorry, we're a little bit late, but I think if you can go on, we can go on. So we finish the
No, we
discussion.
can go on. This is a
Okay.
fun conversation and we're learning a lot. Just
So
wanted to cover all the topics.
So, first objection, Bitcoin is for enemy. Some people are saying that is the principle of Bitcoin itself to allow everybody to do everything on the system, because the point was black market money, permissionlessness, no censorship resistance. So this point should be, it's a philosophical point, Bitcoin is something where you should never prevent somebody from doing something, because otherwise you want to censor your statist. Then what? Then we will censor drug transaction because drugs are bad or something like that. This is a very, very misleading point, because in order to have permissionless in the sense of payments, Bitcoin is an extremely strict system in the terms of formal rules of your payment. For example, your Bitcoin node, when you set it up, will block connections with other nodes that are not respecting the peer-to-peer DDoS, let's say, protocol. Then, when you receive transaction, if this transaction violates the proof of work if the blocks that you receive don't respect the proof of work difficulty, you will delete the block. You cannot answer, well, it's permissionless, so everybody can send all the blocks they want. No, there is a rule. It's permissionless because you are not forced to follow these rules. But Bitcoin is a set of rules. So if you want to use Bitcoin with me, you have to respect this protocol. Otherwise, it's permissionless, but you are not using my system, you're using another system. So you check the difficulty adjustment. You check the block size. If you send 1 terabyte blocks, I will reject it. It's not being censoring. It's not me being about, it's not the content of your payment. I'm not arguing about what you want to do with the payment, but the formal transaction and block you're creating in the technical system, it has to respect some technical rules that are also created to make the system work, basically. So we reject it. If you send me a transaction with a wrong script without a signature, I will reject it. Now, if you send me a transaction which is a good signature, a good script, and the right size and the right in the block with the right difficulty prior of it, but you send it with 7 op returns in one transaction, it's valid, but I will reject it. If you send it with a 90 bytes op return, Bitcoin Core will reject it. Not me, not Ocean. Everybody in Bitcoin will reject it. Now, if you make it, if you manage to put it into a block, now I will accept it. So there are the consensus rules that are not censorship, and then there are weaker, the mempool rules, which are also not censorship, and they are made by Bitcoin Core, and Bitcoin Core uses them a lot. Then there are people that are using mempool rules that are even stricter. For example, Bitcoin Knots by Luke Dashir, which Ocean Mining Pool is using, decided to keep the limit of op return to 40 bytes. Why? Because the hash that you need for timestamping is like 32 bytes. Then you give some other characters for like tagging and marking, and then you are set. So 40 bytes is enough to do timestamping. Bitcoin Core was 40 bytes. Then Bitcoin Core increased it to 80 bytes, and Knots Luke said, no, I'm not increasing. If I find it in a block, I will accept it. But then again, if you find it in a block, you accept also 4 megabyte of op return, because even the core rule is just a mempool rule. So Core will reject from mempool 90 bytes, but they will accept it in blocks. Knots will reject from mempool 50 bytes, but they will accept it in blocks, just like Core. So this is another rule. So now about ordinals and inscription especially. The idea is that since it's an obvious attack on Bitcoin, and since it is a concept of spam that can be defined objectively, it's not what is spam, it's clearly spam, we can do something about that, which is nothing that has to do with the philosophy of permissionless. I give you another metaphor, another example. Tor browser is created so you can navigate to stuff that would be censored on ClearNet. Some are good stuff, some are very, very bad stuff. Still, regardless, the ideology of Tor is not on me to decide what can you browse online. So Tor browser is censorship resistance to a degree. Now, Tor had a DDoS attack, a spam attack, that made Tor unusable for some months. The developers of Tor, they were like, we have to exclude these packages because these packages are sent to replace the actual traffic packages to make Tor unusable. So this is an attack, a spam attack. There is a value in the attacker, whoever he is, because of course otherwise he will not attack, but it is a negative value for Tor users that want to use Tor to navigate on your site. So in order to keep you free to visit the websites on Tor, we have to restrict the rules to prevent the spam attack. So an idea by Ocean and others, well, it's not even actually Ocean, it's more an idea by Knots. Knots is a Bitcoin implementation run by Luke
Hmm.
Dashier,
Hmm.
and this implementation is restricting the rules of the mempool, not of the consensus. We could restrict the rules of the consensus as well. That will not be against censorship resistance. We don't do it because to do that you have to agree with everybody. Otherwise, you will have a consensus split. So you cannot change consensus without full agreement, but you can change the mempool without full agreement. That means that on your node, your mempool will be clean, and your nodes connected to you will receive only clean messages, and you will protect them from spam. If a super majority of the network gradually uses more and more knots, this spam will be very, very hard to send to nodes, and then you will be forced to send it to miners directly and to pay to them off band. So that's doable, but that's introduced an added friction. Now there is a completely different question: is this friction enough to reduce the attack or not? This is a question in which I don't have a strong position. Some people are respecting this is completely useless and that mempool filters are useless, and I agree that could be the case. Maybe people will just move to miners directly, and this filtering will not prevent these attacks from happening. That's
And
actually depends from the budget of the attack. If the budget is that high enough,
yeah,
filters will not work.
yeah, I wanted to ask you if you think they are gonna run out of their budget to keep
I,
doing this thing, not only with the future implications, but actually, currently the fees are so high. I'm afraid they're gonna run off anytime soon of this budget they
I
have.
don't know. Like I think like BSV Calvin Ayer will probably
But
have to stop because they will have other expenses very soon for the Craig Wright
yeah, for the Craig
Macintosh
Wright.
trial.
Mhm.
So they
Right.
may run out of money. Taproot Wizard they raised something like 6 million probably or 8 million. I don't remember. Maybe, let's say 6 million just to spam the network. So they will run out of 6 million, but it takes time. Even with high fees, it takes some time to run out of 6 million of budget just for spamming. The market frenzy, so the market demand, organic demand by gamblers to create new tokens, is fading away because that was already like there was a NFT hype in 2021. You know that every Bitcoin bubble brings a hype.
They-
2017
like
brought
like a new
ICOs.
generation of shitcoins.
Yeah, exactly. New generation of
Mhm.
shitcoin narrative. In 2017, it was ICOs, and then it all died basically. Except Ethereum is one of the last ICO that is still in profit, but most other ICOs are basically all died. Then there was 2021 with the NFT logic. It was a huge bubble. Twitter was changing your image profile to put an NFT
Uh-huh.
there.
Uh-huh.
Like
Remember that.
art like artists on auction companies that were using NFTs. Everybody wanted to use Nike. Everybody wanted to do NFTs. Jack Dorsey was supposed to be a Bitcoin maximalist, also investor of Ocean like me, well, a little bit bigger than me, but uh, he was using NFTs. Like my tweet is now an NFT. So it was big in 2021. That big hype is completely destroyed right now. So the NFT of Jack Dorsey that was sold for several, like 80 million something, is now like $8 or something. The Twitter removed the NFT function. Facebook removed the NFT projects.
Yeah,
It
Instagram
is there.
too used to it.
Ordinals and inscriptions are the attempt to revitalize and resurrect this hype for the last part, but it's not really like it's like a zombie. You see like that there is
Mhm.
the living body which was alive in 2021. It died. Now there is out of the grave there is this hand of the zombie which is NFTs on Bitcoin is a dwarf compared to that. So the organic demand for NFT scams is there, is
Basically.
undeniable. I'm not saying that all the money coming into fees is only Craig Wright and only Vitalik Buterin and Wertheimer. There is some actual money coming from users, but it's like this is going away. The question that I have is, could this kind of attack be sponsored by a nation state in the future? And I think the answer, unfortunately, is yes, because the nation state could be several things. One is sponsor pay miners to mine to not mine anymore. So I give you money to stop mining. This is bad, but not so bad because difficulty will go down and so other miners will come in. Then second thing I can do, which is better, is I pay you to actually mine empty blocks without transactions or with fake transaction, which is the same with just the coin base. This is bad because the blocks will not contain transactions, so people will not be able to transact, but
The
the difficulty
difficulty
will stay up.
will, yeah, it's gonna
Then I could do
remain the
something
same,
even
right?
worse, because at least if I do empty blocks, at least running a node will not become harder because we are not increasing the blockchain
Yeah,
into exoset. So what I can do, which is even worse, is I pay the miners to do block without actual transaction, but full of data that you have to download anyway. So now your difficulty stays up, transactions are not getting confirmed, but your blocks are also full with spam, basically with data. But even this is not the worst thing because you can still prune the blockchain. So the perfect attack is I will pay miners to do blocks which don't contain transaction but do contain data, which is all creating new UTXO set. So now you cannot even prune it, or not trivially, because now you have to keep it in your UTXO set, which is also
do
cached.
you think that in that scenario is possibly to have a like a coordinated hard fork against those miners?
So yes and no. I think that this will not be a clean solution because if this is an attack surface that exists, even if you fire the miners and you send them away, eventually the attack surface you didn't eliminate it. You will have to fork every time there is this
Yeah, they
problem,
will come up again. Hmm.
and forking is a very dangerous thing because you need complete consensus. I declare that if miners are attacking you, miners are still part of the ecosystem, so you don't have full consensus. So
Hmm.
a part of the ecosystem is attacking the users. So now it's a dirty thing, and forking requires coordination, and coordination requires centralization. So if there are several splits, which one is Bitcoin? People could start to trust a central entity to decide which one is Bitcoin. Is like in Ethereum, people will just if there is a fork in Ethereum, people will just do self upgrade of get and parity, and the foundation will decide for them. They don't even have to care. The Ethereum can decide an upgrade or a downgrade in 3 days, and they just push the code, and everybody will go
Yeah.
along because nobody cares and nobody run nodes and nobody check the software. So if we don't go there to Bitcoin, we need Bitcoin to be resilient to changes of code. So coordinating to fight the miner, I think, is a very dangerous thing. It's possible that if we think we have a one-off situation, like if we have an extraordinary situation where the situation is so bad that Bitcoin is completely unusable without a fork, it's not necessarily a hard fork. Maybe you can just use a soft fork to change the difficult, to change the to add a new basically proof of work of different nature that will make all the ASICs worthless. Uh,
Unusable, yeah.
the
So
code exists. It's called the malice. It exists, discussed for many years. It's not something new that we have to come up with. The atomic weapon to fire the miners exists, has been coded and maintained, and it can be deployed. But that's like an atomic. That's literally a finger on atomic arsenals. It's like if there is no other choice but for Bitcoin to die, at this point, let's press it. But as long as there is any hope that Bitcoin
no,
can
but
survive with different methods will be preferable.
we don't want to go there. It's like this nuclear war where every part has a even stronger nuclear weapon, so they threaten to each other
Yeah,
to deploy it, but they don't
agree.
do in the end, and
I
both
disagree.
parts don't want
For
to do it.
example, with Luke, I disagree with him about this. He said a nuclear threat is not credible if you're saying out loud that you want to avoid it. But still, I prefer to be clear that I want to avoid it.
So how do we create incentives for the miners to keep themselves in the right path of Bitcoin? Because there's a reality, and not only that the fees that they are receiving right now are high, but it's the other part that otherwise they are not having it. These fees with the scaling solutions, And on the other half, we need them to secure the network so we can permit the difficulty levels to, or the hash rate in the end, to go down to previous levels.
I mean, we can afford the a lower
Well,
hash rate with.
as long as stronger technology don't come up and
No,
try
well,
to.
but no, because the stronger technology will just increase the hash rate by coming in. So no, the point is that we can afford the lower security. The problem is that then we have to wait more to have the same monetary security for the same settlement. So if you close a lightning channel, maybe you trust it after 6 confirmation. If hash rate is lower, you have to wait for 7, 8, 9 confirmation to get the same level of cost to reorg. So security is how much it costs to reorg the chain. Well, that's not general security, but security in the blockchain sense. It's how much it costs to reorg. If hash rate is lower, then reorg costs less. So in order to have the same security, you just have to wait more. So
Wait, more
it's a
block.
trade-off in that sense. So we can use Bitcoin with a lower hash rate. The higher the hash rate, the better, because then basically transactions are immediately more expensive to reorg. That's basically it. So what to do? I think that minor non-disruptive actions like mempool filtering, I think they cannot hurt. Sure, they may push people to pay miners off band, but they do that already anyway for other reasons, including transaction accelerators and including the problems with fee pinning attacks, problem with UX. There are many reasons people are already paying off band. So the mempool is still doesn't exist as a global consensus concept. So who cares? Somebody said if we filter the mempool, then our fee estimation becomes unreliable, but that's not true. Your fee estimation, if it's done right, it doesn't depend on the mempool, but it depends mostly on past blocks and other kind of analysis. So
Mhm.
it's still very reliable right now. If you use a good fee estimator right now, it works fine in knots as it works in core. So that's not true. So the problem just becomes that you have something which is already going on, which is of ban payments. So if you ask me if filters for spam on the mempool level are something to do, I would say yes. They worked in the past. I think the negative effects are exaggerated. If you ask me if filters are going to be enough, the answer is probably not. For this kind of situation with ordinance, which is probably just the NFT scam dying off, plus Taproot Wizard with some money, plus Craig Wright with some money, yes, it's probably going to be enough to filter them out. But with a more consistent attack with a nation state trying this attack, filters will not help. So the long term, so the short term solution that I don't see any problem with are filters, and indeed, in my node, I'm running filters, and in the mining pool, I'm investing in advising, I'm running filter, and my small hash rate, my little ASICs are pointed to Ocean with the template selecting the filters. So I'm doing it already, and it works for me. If more people does like me, it will become harder to push the spam directly in the ban pool. But if that's
And
long term,
and aren't you earning any less fees for applying these filters?
not significantly in the sense that the mining pool itself. So first of all, in Ocean you can select the template. The idea of Ocean long term is that every miner will have to create the template client side, so he will create the template on his node and then send it and then share the reward to lower
So
variance. So
you
that's the
can you can basically program your
hero
own
template.
node to create templates of blocks that are full of transactions with enough
Yeah,
fees to sustain yourself.
exactly. And
Do you think
right
that there
now,
are going to be less on-chain transactions in the future? Like
no,
maybe there are not going to be plenty for everyone, for every
well,
miner out there.
no, that's already so. Miners cannot be profitable alone already in solo mining because you need at least 1% of the network to lower variance before the difficulty adjustment. So you have space for at most 100 mining pool of 1% each, not more. But inside the pool, or the logic of Ocean is that it's not the pool deciding your template, it's you deciding your template. Right now, you cannot create your template. We're still not finished with the technological development. What you can do is select among a few templates. One is Bitcoin Core current full of spam. One is Bitcoin Core with a patch. One is Knots, which is very, very much spam free. And when you select, the guy that will find the block will decide which goes on. The incentives will balance because the short-term incentives for miners is to maximize the fees. The long-term incentives for miners, rational, is not altruistic, it's rational, it's
Hmm.
not to damage Bitcoin. So as always in the market, short-term incentives will match with long-term incentives. Like if Cartier may have a short-term incentives to maximize profit with selling diamonds. So they could sell fake diamonds or bad quality diamonds. For a while, they will get the same revenue with lower costs. So they will maximize profits. But then long term, they will just ruin their business. So there are long term profits and short term profits, and you have to match both. And so the idea of Ocean is that each hasher will decide if they want to maximize the good for Bitcoin or their profit with the short-term fees, and they will put somewhere in between. Because if you wanted to only maximize the good of Bitcoin, you will just do solo mining, which will destroy you with variance. If you just want to maximize your short-term profit, you just go to you don't even select your blocks. You get paid from by Luxor to just hash on stuff that you don't even see. So Ocean tried to stay in between and to offer a range of options to different people. Now the game theory goes in my favor because I so each miner will so if you select a block without spam, the block if you find the block, then everybody else, including you, will have a little bit less in fees, maybe assuming that the spam is paying a lot more than fees. But if you are not the one that are funding the block, somebody else is still paying you for the spam. So if I create my block without spam and I point to Ocean, and now somebody who is creating the block with spam in Ocean will find the block, I will also receive part of their fee. So I'm fine because I'm doing the best for Bitcoin long term. But if somebody is not, they will still have to pay me some of their share. Long-term scenario, long-term, I'm optimistic about fees because there is one thing that real transactions can do and spam cannot do, which is aggregation. So with fees, with real transaction, with a Lightning channel, I can aggregate 1 month of transactions between me and you. So if I
Hmm.
have to pay $200 of fees, that's not worth it for to send it $3. But if we have to send $3 back and forth for 1 year, every day, then that's worth it. So I will open a channel with you because I'm batching the transaction off chain. If we create a channel with not just two people, but with 200 people, then we just have to pay just $1 each to mortgage all the cost. So transaction can be aggregated on off chain. Spam cannot. In order to put your data on Bitcoin, if you want timestamp your data, you can aggregate. So it's great, it's scalable. So people can share the fees to do open timestamps. But if you want to put your monkey face on the blockchain as an encoded data, that cannot aggregate. You have to pay it in full. So I think that if there is not a sponsored state attack to fill the chain with spam, every organic demand for spam will be less than the organic demand for transaction. There is an economic incentive. I want to say that there is also though a reputational incentive. So many things that we do in life uh, depends on social convention and social enforcement. There is no if buying underpants is expensive, it's not economically rational for you to get around with pants instead of naked with your ass naked. It's more economically incentivized for you to just not buy the pants or not change them. But people around you will socially enforce this norm on you because if you start go around with without your pants, people will have problems. So this is less true on the internet. In the internet,
Yeah,
etiquette is reduced, but even on the internet, and especially in an industry, if we set if we set a high bar for social norms and behavior that is not anti-Bitcoin, that is going to be priced in the incentives. People say, "Oh no, so what you want to do? You just want to say the spam is bad, so people will earn less money." Yes, if your company creates a problem for Bitcoin, and then I don't invite you in conferences anymore, I boycott your product, I don't include your product in good product reviews, I do not help you with open source patches, I don't fund your development, I don't praise your product. If boycotts in free market exist, so we
yeah,
can
I
put
agree with that. I definitely agree with that, and that brings me back to your comment about, um, like, reputation is basically another form of value. Is it works almost like a social economy, right?
it
It's
is.
like you are exchanging this token that's named reputation. So, um I forgot what I was going to say about your
No,
last
no, but
comment, but
yeah, reputation is
it was.
important. Of course, in Bitcoin, the fact that we have to struggle because on one side there is reputation, there is social pressure, there are social norms. There is also the idea of cypherpunk anonymity. So if you are an anonymous cypherpunk, you now that the goal was to make it hard to enforce stuff on you, including behavior. So there is a tension there, of course. But still, so we cannot force anonymous people using Bitcoin to behave well, and that's why Bitcoin must be resistant to misbehavior from the game theoretical level, from the software level. But game theory, at least for the overt part of the industry, includes also social incentives. So if your Bitcoin conference doesn't invite and praise and invests in bad behavior with scam, NFT, Ponzi schemes, and spammy technology, that's something that will help Bitcoin to enforce this stuff. It's not like there is a misconception that there is profit and there is charity. First of all, even if that was the case, charity is an economic force in the world that exists and has consequences. So it's not like, oh, this is not profitable, so it will not exist. No, churches exist, non-profit exists, charity like Masonic clubs, consortium, literally clubs. People are not only driven by money. Money is the more scalable measure of interest, but there is stuff which is not monetary that exists. Families exist. I take care for my kids without them paying me at all because stuff that is not monetary exists. But it's not very scalable. But it is scalable because like churches are very scalable and they also do charity. The first hospitals for poor people were not profitable. The first the well wars are not profitable. Sometimes they destroy your profits, but some people still go to war. So there is this stuff which is not just profit, and even that profits are not just short-term profit. There is a tension between short-term maximization and long-term maximization, and every company will stand some point behind this maximization always. So it's not like, oh, I'm earning $1 less of fees, so it is not viable. No, if by doing that Bitcoin is getting better and increasing the price of Bitcoin that I'm earning, that's convenient for me, of course.
So I had a question about Bitcoin notes because I remember that when I was more into journalism professionally, because I'm doing more social media than any other thing, but I still have the journalist blood. I did a very deep coverage about Taproot, and I wanted to know your stance on Bitcoin notes not having Taproot enabled, as far as I understand,
Mm.
in its mempool.
No, Bitcoin Notes does accept and enforce a taproot rule in the mempool. Now,
Yeah.
maybe you're referring to so Bitcoin Notes as is keeping the old op return limit to 40 instead of the new one of 80. It is excluding bare multisig, So the multisig done in the output on chain, which is the opposite of taproot in a way. And it's also is filtering out the transaction that is using op files in the input inside the taproot script. So yeah, that's probably what you're referring to. So one way to write code to encode stuff on the blockchain is to put it in the output. That's easy to prune if you do a return. Otherwise, it's hard, and so you can do it. Another way is to put this stuff in the input, in the witness, so you are taking over the witness discount. But before Taproot, there was a script limit that limited the amount of data you can put in the input of Segwit. With Taproot, since you can put a very complex tap script condition, this limit doesn't exist anymore. So Knots reintroduced the limit for arbitrary data inside the Taproot scripts that was for the mempool that was removed in the normal Bitcoin Core Taproot. So Bitcoin Knots is accepting Taproot, using Taproot, enforcing Taproot. But if you try to put this data, these like inscriptions or other stuff inside the witness by using the fact that Taproot transaction don't enforce the script limit, now Knots is just extending the script limit that was already valid before Taproot to Taproot as well. So it's just extending a mempool policy to Taproot, but it's not excluding Taproot.
Okay, thank you for having me to be clear on that, because Luke used to be a very hard guy when it comes to debates, and there's a lot of things that are left unexplained on Twitter. I mean,
Yeah,
the format of Twitter is hard
yeah.
to cover up all the
But with Luke
issues.
is sometimes is hard in person as well. Luke is one of the most intelligent persons I know, but he has a lot of trouble to understand that other people are not as smart as him. So for him, he will just say something which is obvious, like yes, no, and everybody else has to get there, which is very hard to him for him to understand. So I completely agree that. But for example, in Ocean, we have good explain. So Luke is a central figure, but there is Bitcoin mechanics explaining stuff way more slowly and for everybody as dumb as me that can understand as well.
Well, we have to visit more conference than to meet in person and have these
Gladly.
discussions. But so to end up this conversation, I wanted to go back to the Plan B network.
Sure.
Maybe you can take these minutes to explain us further more about that, and what are your plans with that particular project through this year. I think I saw the launch of it in the Lugano Plan B
Forum. Yes.
conference forum on last October. So tell us more about that, please.
Yes, so the website right now includes a lot of free education. You can find a lot of Bitcoin courses, Lightning courses, and it's especially strong in languages. You can find translations in several languages. So far, most of the text is translated, but we are using language models basically to also translate videos with stuff like Hey Gen. So there will be videos translated also with the voice of the speaker translated in several languages. And the little map that you've seen, if you go up, these changes will happen in the next couple of weeks. Go up a little bit, you will see a map. This map is just a picture, but soon this week there should be out a new version with the integration with BTC Map, where you can find the Plan B nodes. For example, Lugano will be a Plan B node, Madeira will be a Plan B node, San Salvador will be a Plan B node, El Zonte will be a Plan B node, Prospera in Honduras will be a Plan B node, in Costa Rica there will be a Plan B node, in Belgrade there will be a Plan B node, and so on and so in Africa. So there will be many nodes, and you can click and see everything going on there. Then instead of this radar of courses like BTC1, BTC2, LN1, we will have an interactive tree of courses. It's already developed. We just have to send it in production, where you can enter and you can say that I want to learn from this point to this point, that goes from general orange peeling to Lightning development with core Lightning plugins. So from the very general to the very, very specific, not only technical, but also like humanistic, like history of Bitcoin, economies, finance, all the topics. The idea is to start from Bitcoin education. Then we will add something which is not Bitcoin strictly, like for example, hole punch, decentralized peer-to-peer communication, encrypted communication. So this kind of stuff, which is Bitcoin contiguous. And then there will be something like energy, thermodynamics, nuclear power, solar power, which is contiguous to mining. So we'll expand a little bit. My idea is to have a couple of non-Bitcoin courses in 2024. Then in 2025, probably will branch off even more on different topics. The general philosophy will be this is the plan B for education. So the plan A, you just go to school and they will give you the plan A. If you don't trust the plan A, we are going to give you the plan B on education. So Bitcoin is the plan B for money. Peer-to-peer will be the plan B for communication. Maybe something else will be a plan B for energy, or even in the future nutrition or self-defense or whatever, or plan B to learn math and physics or whatever. There is a lot of stuff that you can search right now. Right now, all the resources you can see are static, so you just free. You go there and you read in your language. From the next in next weeks, you will have the first live programs where you have to subscribe and you can also pay. So you will be able to, for example, to register to Lisa's song courses, Jimmy Song's courses, all this kind of new, and also the courses I'm programming with Plan B directly. There will be a season of courses that will include the Lugano Summer School. You will be able to register to the Lugano Summer School from this website in a few days or weeks. Then it will be the Cubo Plus program in El Salvador. You will be able to register from here. So everything which is going on will be centralized basically in this website. There will be a social part in which you sign in and you can text with others. So it's developing right now. We launched it in October, and we did some developers, but right now so far there was a lot of organizational part to develop for these these first months, and now the actual development of the platform is going to take more speed and more momentum. So check out the planb.network and planb_network on Twitter. We will probably start to tweet out next week. The first big event of Plan B Net will be Madeira. So in Madeira, we will have a room to do a something like a Bitcoin diploma, which is actually something similar to TOEFL for English, like a Bitcoin certification. So we will do exams to people and release certification on this platform. And from there, it will basically expand and hopefully will become let's say, a mix between an online university and the booking.com of Bitcoin, because you will also be able to select your office, maybe your hotel space, your B&B when you go to a conference. So we will do physical places as one cornerstone, and content and education as the second cornerstone.
So this Madeira conference is Bitcoin Atlantis, right?
Yeah,
Happening
it
from
is.
March 1 to 4, I
One,
believe.
two, three. Yeah, exactly.
1 to 3, okay. Well, thank you, Giacomo, for this long conversation. I'm very glad that we extended all this whole time to discuss these very deep topics for us Bitcoiners. What I forgot to say when I told you was that, people, new Bitcoiners, I mean, these ordinals guys claim that they are recruiting or onboarding new Bitcoiners, but they are taking advantage of new Bitcoiners not knowing the history.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that I wanted to point it out that it was important to keep pushing forward education, debate, and clarifying beyond education, because when it comes to basic education about Bitcoin, you're going to be on what is mining or how transactions works. But when you go deep down into these debates, that I think that's important too. That's another type of education. It's about history. It's about philosophy. It's about the history of thinking about Bitcoin and
Yeah,
debates. So,
the
so very oftenly the education organizations, they don't include that part of Bitcoin, and it's very important to take topic back to the discussion and to the educational efforts, because they make a big part of what the builders are doing right now, because you build things in the physical world, but they come from your ideas, no? And as you said in the beginning, and in other podcasts I heard of you, if you didn't realize what were the flaws of the colored coins or any other stuff happening in 2012, you wouldn't be making the things you're doing right now and building
Exactly.
the solutions you're doing right now. So you
Exactly.
need this background, this philosophical background, to do better things in the future.
And
So that's
historical,
very
you're very
important.
right that historical background is very important. Like education itself is all about avoiding some mistakes of the past. So people will learn without any kind of formal education. They will learn with trial and error. You try to you eat this berry and you will feel sick, so you don't eat this berry anymore. That's learning. But education is not that. Education is, you can learn by mistakes, but some people can tell you about past mistakes they have already made, so they can prevent
Yeah,
you, they can pass you down the knowledge without you having to feel sick every time. So this
you
is exactly
definitely you are a wise student if you learn from others' mistakes, not only
precisely.
from yours. Like,
That's education. So in order to go to open timestamps, I had to go through eternity wall. In order to get to RGB, I had to go through colored coins. But the fact that I did can help me to help you to jumpstart and skip and short circuit these mistakes and go to directly. Of course, I have to make you able to verify my thinking, so to not to trust me on that, to be able to verify that it makes sense. But the whole point of education is, don't to reduce a little bit, not completely, but a little bit, the eternal September. Instead of everybody coming to Bitcoin and making the same mistakes, falling for scams, falling for shit coins, storing coin in exchange that will close down, escaping with your money, all this failing your cold storage, messing up with your lighting channels, all this stuff. Instead of having to make it all the mistakes, you can learn from other people's mistakes, and you can still make mistakes, but maybe new ones.
exactly. Well, awesome. Thank you for your time. This was Money on Chain Talks with Saro. This time with Giacomo Zucco, discussing miners and users versus spam. And I think that wise users and educated users are the ones who are going to save Bitcoin from any attack that comes from any place, even nation states or spammers, scammers, or uh, shitcoiners or whoever. So thank you, Giacomo. Hope to see you again anytime soon, maybe in a conference, maybe in another chapter of this podcast. And I have
Absolutely.
nothing else to appreciate you.
Have a
Thank
nice
you.
day. Bye. Bye.
Have a nice day too. Bye.